Alrighty, let's begin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to the Figured webinar today for the IAgSA Conference Week 2021. What we're going to be doing today is digging into some of the key features of Figured, talking about how they create efficiencies and improve the accuracy of your farm's financial data. On our call today as well, I've got Paddy, who's our Customer Success Manager. He's going to take you through how this all works inside of the product. But as we begin, I'm just going to take us through a little bit of housekeeping. We'd love for this to be an interactive webinar. So if you have a question, reach out to us either by using the in-app chat or by using the Q&A that's inside of Zoom. All you need to do is click that little Q&A button that can then ask you a question and then send it through to us, let us know, and we can take you through the product. So what we're going to do today is we're going to touch on some of the main trends that are inside of technology and the way that we see UK agri-tech moving. That'll then lead us into a conversation around how you can work within Figured and Xero, saving you time, improving the accuracy of your farm data, and working more flexibly. We'll then finish on a comparison of the different versions of Figured. So we'll look at some of the pricing and functionality differences, and then your next steps to get started. So, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about where Figured's come from. If you haven't heard of us before, we're a cloud tool designed to give you farm management accounts. So we've been linked in with Xero since the beginning of us founding. Founded originally in New Zealand, and you can probably tell by the accent, I'm also one of the Kiwis, but I am based here in UK in London. And we've been linked in with Xero since the very beginning so that we can build a product that works for farmers all across the world. We've been linked in with Xero as a strategic partner, so we have a very tight link with the way that Figured and Xero work together. Anything that you do inside of Xero will come through into Figured, so you can think of Xero as your place to do work, and Figured is the place to get your agri reports. That then comes through with another type of unlock as well, because not only are we the only agri-specific app in the Xero ecosystem, but that ecosystem means that you get to benefit from the 800 other apps that are inside of that ecosystem. So you get to pick and choose the right tool for each client, giving you the most flexibility and really giving you a unique set of tools available for you to work with. We've been working really closely with Xero, and today we're going to take you through a little bit on how the Xero product works, and then a little bit about how it ties into Figured. The agricultural sector, though, it's got an interesting set of challenges and opportunities, and we see that financial planning, and we see that farmers who do build out plans are on track to be more successful. And we know that there's a lot of things happening, especially in the UK, around changing subsidies. We know that the new subsidy scheme is going to have a part to play in terms of calculating carbon and climate impacts that are on that, which represents its own opportunities and challenges. We see UK agri is accelerating really quickly in terms of its technology use. So we were born originally entirely into cloud, and we see that a lot of people are moving to that, especially with open banking and being able to integrate the right tool for each job. What that's doing, though, is it's creating an extra burden for a lot of farmers. They went into business not to be experts in law and experts in finance and experts in all of these other things. A lot of farmers went in to be the best farmers. And there's a big burden that comes with having to pull all of this together for people. And we see that there's an interesting proposition that's coming out of that in order to bring in the rest of that farming team, which we'll be talking about in a minute. All of this equipment, all of the growth also has to come from the availability of capital, which has its own challenges in terms of staying on track to budgets for bankers if you're taking out loans and the like. And all of this is driving a really interesting time for UK agriculture. It's got a challenge of a risk, and it's got the challenge of that opportunity. And we see that there's a requirement for planning out there, as well as understanding your financial position up to date. Where something like Figured and Xero come into play is being able to give you that timeliness of your data, giving you the up-to-date financial position as of this month or as of today for your gross margins and more. Across that, these are the three things that we see are really growing here. So the technology, we're seeing cloud accounting and tech is continuing to accelerate. That's really important because, again, it's that flexible and interoperability between applications. For our own product, for example, we recently linked in with BCMS. So if you could bring in live livestock data into a platform, bring in live accounting data into a platform, bring in other production work inside of that as well, that gives you better specialization and a tool that's better fitted for the job rather than a generic do-all application. That ecosystem that's building out of that is all around sharing data. And we see that that open banking and that open sharing of data is really important, because that then feeds through to giving you more and richer sources of data for things like benchmarking, being able to compare farmers across each other, across a region or across a production type and more. There are those who embrace technology and those who are embracing that variety of choice and tackling the challenge that comes with adoption are those who are going to be farming smarter and not harder. Getting their data in the right place, being able to share your data across your Agri platform so that everyone has availability to the same numbers at the end of the day, and building together a common ledger where everything is all talking to each other rather than a single application trying to bite off all of that and be too generic. The figured product, and when I talk about that single ledger, is really core to the way that we work. We see Figured as a tool to bring the whole farming team together across all of the different types of operations that have to happen on a farm, across planning, operation tracking, reporting, and then being able to integrate different data sources. Each person in that farming team, which we see as being the farmer, an accountant, an advisor, or bookkeeper, as well as any other farm managers, we see them all working to the same page and working off of the same set of numbers is really important. No more is there exporting and sending things across and working on one platform and sharing to another, because everyone's all these applications are all integrating and they have that ecosystem behind it. It means that everyone is working to the same set of numbers, whether that's across planning and building up multi-year plans, being able to reforecast as often as you need as the weather changes or as their position changes, being able to get those accurate gross margins by looking at that farm operation and being able to allocate income and expenses to your different production centres, through to producing a really neat report pack that can be shared with the rest of the farming team, and it can also be pulled out externally to be shared with people like bankers or other key members of the team. So we've designed it for bookkeeping partners like yourselves, the farm secretary partners like yourselves, but we know that it's accessible for the entire farming team. So there's always a role to play across each one, and each person can kind of work and play within the scope of what they're using the product for. This launches through to our first question about how you're using software, because what I'm really interested to hear from you all is around cloud adoption of your clients and of yourselves as farm secretaries. Are you using cloud accounting tools? It doesn't necessarily have to be Figured or Xero, but are you using cloud accounting tools? Are you considering it? Are you not considering it? Are you going to be keeping entirely on desktop base? It's up to you. I'm really curious to see kind of how that comes through. And right now it looks like we're kind of tossing up between those who are using Xero or another cloud accounting tool, or those who are considering it. So that's great to see that people are still considering the different options, and that you've got that availability of choice. I'm sure you probably remember while I was talking just before, this is something that you kind of can build and customize to be perfect for each farmer client that you have. So there's a bit of variety that can come inside of that. And I'll share the results with you all that's come through. I think this is really interesting. Being able to see here that we're kind of tossing up between Xero and those who are still considering it, but at the whole, the majority of people are using cloud software, whether it's Xero or Sage or Intuit, QuickBooks or anything else. So it's quite interesting to see. There's already this cloud adoption that's happening inside of it, inside of this industry, and that's fantastic to see. Cool. I'm now going to go through a little bit about how Figured works and how integrating across these different tools is really important, because this is maybe a little bit different to any other desktop piece of kit you used before. When you're using Figured and Xero or another member of the ecosystem, they do look like different tools because they are built for different purposes. But each tool is focusing on doing its best role for the member of the team, whether that's using something like HubDoc or Receipt Bank, or Dext as they're now called, and having that data flow into Xero. So you've got a really efficient way of capturing data, and then that gets sent through to Figured. It is the same numbers, it's the same data being shared through across these different tools. That means if you're using something like HubDoc and you're finding, look, that's just, maybe that isn't working perfectly for you, you've got other options inside of the ecosystem. It's future-proofed and flexible for different types of operations too, and that is especially important for diversified farms, and especially important given we are seeing more farm diversification happening on the market. By having Xero and Figured at the core of your stack, that then unlocks the rest of the ecosystem for you to give you more and to give you more options available to you. What I'm now going to go through is a quick little tour of the way that you can employ some of these efficiency gains through the rest of the ecosystem. And I'm originally going to start with right from when you receive an invoice. If you receive like an email invoice, you can email your bills directly into Xero. So the example I've brought up here is just going straight into Xero. But you then got the choice of using the rest of that ecosystem, HubDoc, Dext, all of that coming together to really supercharge it. So you're able to use the right tool for each job. You can send those emails directly into the accounting system, which then means that when you're doing a reconciliation against your bank, you've got that live feed of transactions coming from your bank, and you can match that to something that you've already coded in by using a tool like Receipt Bank or HubDoc, or create new transactions. This gives you that live view into farm movements and farm profitability, which is really important because the things that happen in here and the way that you do that tagging then flows through inside of Figured in the way that we handle farm enterprises. What I really like about this step of the process with bank reconciliation is that you can even tag a transaction to be specifically a part of an enterprise. So you could say, these bedding costs are specifically for dairy cattle, and that can then flow into Figured and then feed through to that cost of production, automating even more work. Xero allows you to automate, again, that coding by using bank rules, which can be based on things like contacts or quantities, it can be things like descriptions and how do you want to have that handled into the future. These rules can even tag what the enterprise is for you. So if you've got, say, a mixed farm, you can say anytime something comes through for bedding, that always goes through to my livestock, and then maybe more will come through into our arable. Generally, the way that I see it is you automate, say, 80% of it, and then the last 20% of it, which is specific usually to a client or specific usually to the way that someone works, it's that 20% that you're then able to kind of handle and add in the farming specific work, but you should be able to automate a fair chunk of it. So I've sent an invoice into Xero, reconciled it, we've looked at how we can create some rules. We were talking about how the data is the same across all of the different systems. So you get all the efficiencies when it comes to data entry for Xero, and then when it comes into Figured, you then get the efficiency for your agri reporting. To keep it simple, the way that I usually think of it is that Xero has the pounds and Figured has the quantities. So pounds allow you to really quickly put all of that work in there. And then when you want to look at quantities like livestock or products in store or harvests or harvest year reporting, you've got all of that inside of Figured. But at the core of it, it's the same pounds. So it ties back to the books tightly. We sync with Xero all of the time so that the numbers that you see inside of Figured are identical to the ones that you see inside of Xero. It's a two-way sync, so you can update something in Xero, it comes through to Figured or vice versa. But the key thing here is that when you run a report in Figured, it's the same numbers as what you see in Xero, but with your livestock or with your quantities or with all of the farm-specific harvest year reporting. I'm now going to introduce to you guys a concept that we call trackers, and you may call them enterprises already. So every enterprise that's on farm has a tracker, whether that's livestock trackers, which for cattle can link through to BCMS and pull through livestock automatically and give you a 2 years view into the livestock movements. That syncs automatically from BCMS as a read-only integration. So that means that whenever you run a report inside of Figured, you've got the live livestock numbers. That can also be crop seasons, which are for harvest year reporting, whether you're arable or doing other operations. Figure can do both the quantities and it can do the gross margins for you too. Then for those who have product that goes into store, so maybe that could be like purchased feed, you could have homegrown feed that you're harvesting and then putting into store. You could have fertilizer or direct costs and everything. You can have that all inside of the product tracker. And then that gives you your quantities and valuations and lets you apply it out. So that unlocks for you an ability to have a really nice cost of production and an understanding of on-farm profitability. The costs that you code into Xero can be split across different types of trackers. The allocator is where that happens. So you can keep a simple bookkeeping in Xero and then add in that farm specific split inside of Figured. And just like how Xero's bank feeds have bank rules, the allocator has allocation rules. And you can set those up to be individual for clients so that when you do enterprise coding inside of Xero, it comes through into Figured automatically. You can say that when overheads come through, if you want to do a net margin instead, you can have things like electricity split across your enterprises on a percentage base that makes sense for your client. The allocator brings those single costs, a single invoice, and allows you to say how it's been split. Or if it's a purchase, how it goes into the product tracker. Or if it's a sale, how that sale should then be pulled out of inventory and then split across your different seasons. We put a lot of these smarts into the product so that it can do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. This unlocks a lot of interesting opportunities. So I've now got another question that I'm curious to ask of you all. And I'm just going to send that through now. Here we go. And it's a question about your own business and your own work as farm secretaries. What are your plans for your business in this coming year? Are you going to be keeping it as it is, working with the same clients, but doing it more quicker, so being more efficient? Or are you planning on growing your business and gaining more clients and using some of these tools in your toolkit to be able to do it? I'll leave that up. I'm really curious to hear what you all have to say as a sentiment, as a sense for sentiment, whether we're looking at efficiencies or growth, or we're just going to keep things as they are, as the same. You know, there's nothing wrong with any choice. Cool. Alrighty, you're all quick voters. So now I can share with you all what the score is. So let's take a look. I'm going to end that poll now, share the results with you all. And you know, the common thing I'm seeing here is efficiency. It's all about doing things quicker and faster, reducing your own costs, and then being able to get something really useful out to your clients quickly. And that's fantastic and really interesting to see. It's also interesting to see the number of people who are still planning on growing. You know, COVID hasn't ended the way that operations work for farms. In fact, we're finding a lot of people are using things like Zoom or Teams or doing remote work in order to do work with their clients and share that data even faster. I've found with a lot of accountants and bookkeepers and farm secretaries that I'm talking to, that they're finding that COVID and being able to share your screen in front of the client while you're doing, say, a bit of coding or just to look at the outputs is a really neat way of being able to engage with people rather than having to drive, you know, a couple of hours out to find a client. Cloud software is enabling a fair bit of this as well. Because we're all built in the cloud, there's no limit to the number of people who are logged in or the number of farms that you have access to or the number of clients using it at the same time. That's really powerful to give people the right tools so that they can then see their own data and see their own outputs without having to go through a convoluted process of pulling things out of Excel or pulling it out of another desktop tool and then sharing files across. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Paddy, and he's going to take you guys through the product so you can see it with your own eyes, see the way that it works, and then I'll wrap up with a lot of information. So over to you, Paddy.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Nick. That was great. Let me share my screen here with you. 1 second. Great to, for those of you who don't know, I'm Paddy. I work with Nick, James, and David over here in the UK team. Great to see some familiar names in there. So for some of you, this will be probably a recap on on Figured, but also, yeah, for the others, this is probably maybe the first time you're seeing it. I just thought with Nick touching on a lot of those, the points between Xero and Figured and how they work, we'll just start off with a quick look at Xero. So a lot of you, again, will have seen Xero before and you know how it works, but just to kick off, this is obviously the Xero dashboard here, but we'll just take a look at the bank rec page here and the reconciling process between the transactions. So for those of you who have seen Figured, this page looks quite similar to the allocator page, which we'll touch on when we get into the Figured product. But this is a really powerful tool for reconciling your bank transactions or your bank statement lines against your transactions in Xero. And the key point being here that this reconciling these transactions in Xero, and that all this information then pulls through into Figured as well. So as we're coming through these, this is obviously my demo file, so it's sort of fake information here. So if it looks a little wrong, don't come at me. But this is this is some information. So some false transactions I've entered in here. So we can create new transactions in Xero here just by entering my details in here. And we can then add sort of the enterprises as well to this. So this is my farms in Xero. These are using the tracking categories in here. And we can assign them really quickly as we're coming down this page and allocate these really fast to the appropriate places, which again pulls through into Figured. And we also have the Xero has that find and match tool, which is really handy, which is a quick way of matching your transactions or your bank statements against your transactions in Xero, which again then pulls through into Figured. So just wanted to touch on that really handy feature there, and then and just reiterate the fact that all this information's then pulled through into Figured. So we won't go too much further into Xero. There's obviously a lot of great tools in there. Moving on to Figured. So for those of you who haven't seen it here, this is the dashboard. This is just some sort of key information on here. This is again my demo file. So all sort of fake information in here. Some key things when we're in the product to start off with is along the top here is the date selector, the global date selector, and this is really key because it dictates what we're seeing within the product. So at the moment we're looking at the 2021 financial year, and we can navigate through the financial years just by using the arrows here, and we're seeing a combination of actuals and forecast information. So all of our actual information is held within Xero. We use Xero as our point of truth there. So all of our actuals are all held within Xero. They're all pulled across to Figured, everything there, and then the forecast information is the budget information is all held within Figured itself, obviously. The last drop down here is our actuals to date. This is where we're sort of dictating what we're seeing. So at the moment we're viewing actuals to last month, but we can drop that back to sort of October if we wanted to see pull back those actuals and see the forecast information underneath. So that's quite key when we're in the product. We haven't got too long today, so I'll keep it relatively quick here. But I just wanted to move on to the trackers here. So the trackers are our enterprises essentially in Figured. So we have trackers for all the different types of production you'd have on farm. We've got here you can see milk trackers. We've got various livestock trackers as well, and generic trackers too. We've also got the crop trackers up here as well, which I'll touch on in a second. But first of all, I'll just dive into the livestock trackers. So the idea behind using these enterprises that we're pulling the actuals from Xero, which all link through to Figured, and then we're merging that with the production information within Figured. So this is my dairy cattle here, for example. I've got my dairy cattle segmented into stock classes here. So we've grouped those animals. In this instance, it's age groups here, and we can see the actual transactions here, and these are the transaction types and purchases, etc. So this is where we manage the stock rec in here, and we're bringing the actuals over from Xero if we've entered stock transactions in there, and that flows through to the tracker. But we can also enter in actual transactions through here as well. So we can enter, our obviously our births and deaths and agings won't be financial transactions, but the sales and purchases will be actual transactions, which we then have the option to push through to Xero. So I just wanted to touch on the stock balancer tool as well while we're in here. Because this is a great tool that it's an actual only tool. So we'll just drop down to the actuals there, and it's really a reconciliation tool that we use either on an annual or a monthly basis. So I'll drop into the monthly here to show you the detail of it. So for each tracker here, we're looking at, again, at the dairy cattle, but I've also got my beef cattle in here too. We've got the option to quickly sort of enter our reconciliation transactions. So this is a really handy tool for end of year stock rec. So we can enter our target closing in here for anything, and then it'll give you the variance at the end here, and we can quickly hop in and enter transactions. So whether it be bursts, we can hop in and enter those, or likewise with purchases and sales as well. We can quickly jump in here, into the information, and Figured obviously holds a lot more agri-specific information in this area. So we've got the quantities, the weights in here, whether that's live or carcass, and then the amount in here too, whether it be total or per head, per kilo, however you want to work there. So again, just a really handy tool to quickly keep that stock rec up to date. The whole idea behind keeping that stock rec up to date is, of course, we've got it grouped into, as you can see, into stock classes there, which are age groups. We've also got dairy cows and the other stock classes we've got available there. We're really wanting to drive the livestock valuations, so we can do those end of year valuations and also monthly management valuations within Figured. So keeping the stock rec up to date is really important for that, because that will then pull through. We've got, these are my two enterprises here, the dairy and the beef, but could be combined there. These particular valuations are locked for my 2021 year, but just to show you as an example, we'll pull through the stock rec here and allocate a value per head, and we can quickly do these valuations and then post those journals through to Xero to keep Xero up to date as well. So really quick to touch on that's probably one of the main value points of keeping your stock rec up to date there. So moving on from the livestock, we'll have a look at the arable trackers, which are our newer trackers there. We'll have a look at the 2021 season. So I've got, you can see here that these trackers are a little different. They're broken down into crop types within each season. So whereas with the livestock trackers, we would carry those on year, for each crop that we have in the ground, we would have a crop tracker here, or a crop season as it's called in Figured. So the idea behind breaking those out is we really want to look at the profitability of each crop in each season. So this is the 2021 season, and I've got all my crops broken out here. So we'll just take a look at the winter wheat there. So yeah, the winter wheat obviously is my crop type, and then 2021 my season. So we're really isolating that particular crop. Figured's built quite flexibly in that respect, because obviously I'm sure most of you will know if you've done worked on any arable farms that the harvest season or the arable season doesn't often align with the financial year. So having these isolated trackers like this allows us to sort of take away the strictness of having that financial year end there, and we can work across multiple different years, which is really handy for the arable farming. So this is what the basic tracker looks like here. Lots of sort of numbers in here to start off with, but basically what we're doing is we're setting a season area which we would apply to fields. So in this instance, I've applied my winter wheat to 3 of my fields that I've got set up on this particular farm for a total area of 140 hectares, and we can manipulate that in there, the area there. And that sets out our total area for the crop. And then we then enter harvest transactions for the products that we've got. So I've got wheat grain in here as a product, and then straw as my secondary, my output there. And that sets our total production and then our estimated income as well. So which we can see up here, the estimated income in this column. This is our annual plan or our budget, which we won't touch on today, but that's obviously the budgeting and forecasting is a core element of Figured. We've got our actuals or our actuals plus our forecast here, and then the variance between the two. So that's how we sort of set up these trackers. The harvest is obviously not a financial transaction until we've actually sort of sold the grain or used that product that we're producing, but that's how we set that in here. Moving on, we're really looking at getting those costs against the crop to produce those gross margins, because the whole idea of having this isolated is the profitability breakdown of these crops. So we really want to get the most accurate cost of production and for our gross margin there. So we want to get as many of these costs against it as appropriate. We can see the breakdown of the costs down here. So there's a couple of different ways of working. In any tracker that we're in, we can push transactions through to Xero, or we can pull them across from Xero. The majority of the time, obviously, you'll be doing your coding in Xero, so you'll be pulling transactions through from Xero into Figured, and then what we want to do there is then split that between the different crops or the livestock trackers as well. So to get these costs in against this crop here, to produce our accurate gross margins and our accurate cost of production and get our profit there, what we really wanting to do is allocate those Xero transactions, which is where the allocator tool comes in. So as I mentioned earlier, it looks very similar to the, that's not it, where is it here? The bank rec page in Xero. So we can see here on the left-hand side, we've got our Xero transactions coming through. These are bank transactions, but invoices will obviously come through here, and we pull through everything through this allocator. And then in Figured, we've got the option to allocate those transactions. So this is some casual labor coming through here. It's an old transaction, but we can look at this, and then we can split that out between the relevant enterprises. So this might be split between my dairy cattle and my winter wheat, for example, and maybe also my oats. And we've also got the option to split it on a field level if you want to get down to that level of detail. Obviously, it's an option. It's not necessary, but that option is there. And then we can split that by a pound amount or by percentage or however it needs to be split there. So that's the idea behind the allocator, is getting those transactions through from Xero and then splitting them and allocating to the appropriate enterprises in Figured. Now you saw in Xero, and many of you will be familiar with the tracking options in there as well, using those tracking categories. So if you've tagged it with a tracking option in Xero, we can automate a lot of this, because the idea is we want to automate as much of these allocating of these transactions as possible, because pulling through all of your Xero transactions is a huge amount of information. So setting allocation rules lets us automate, and we really, as Nick said, we really want to automate as much of these as possible, sort of 80% or more of these accounts. So we can set rules based on an account. So in Xero, we might look at bank charges, for example. We might set a rule for bank charges to dismiss that. I don't want to allocate my bank charges to a specific enterprise or anything. It's not irrelevant there, but we can also allocate things like anything related to the dairy, say dairy levies. We could allocate that based on the Xero account here, which is coming through here, and we could then allocate every transaction through to our dairy cattle there. So that's one of the options there, and then again, providing that automation there. There's also the option to add a date range in there. So for things like for your harvest seasons, if you want to split it between the crops within that season, you could set a date range for August to August to let you split the transactions within that date range. And as I mentioned earlier, there's also the option to allocate using the tracking option. So if you are tagging your invoices in Xero already with a tracking option, we can set rules based on that. So anything you've tagged in Xero with barley, we can automatically allocate to barley if we had barley set up in here, which we don't currently, but that option is there. So again, really automating as much of that as possible, so that when it comes through to Figured, where it's automated straight through to those trackers, and we can get those accurate gross margins without having to do any real hard work in there. And obviously, we can leave some accounts in here, which Figured will notify you on how many transactions you've got left in here to allocate, and then we can come in and manually adjust those if we need to, or allocate them to the appropriate place. So moving on there, the next piece I wanted to touch on, which is quite key for the arable side of things, but also for the livestock as well, is the product tracker. And this is our inventory sort of warehouse. So this is where we are keeping track of all of our quantities of our products, everything we produce, our feed for our livestock, and also our inputs for our crops and everything as well. So what we've got here is our list of products. We've got these are the products I've produced. So my wheat grain, we can see this is the quantity I've got on hand currently, the average price per unit there for my wheat grain, which will be the tons, and then the valuation for that as well. So moving through the year, we can see, obviously I'm just looking at actuals at the moment, but moving through the year, we could see what we had in store at any point in time. Also for inputs for our crops, so I've got my fertilizers in here as well, and underneath that I can see when I've purchased them and when I've applied them to what crops on what dates, how much I've applied, and the quantity there. So when we are entering these products in, we can pull them across from Xero. We add a quantity to that product and assign it to the product tracker, and then when we're applying it, as we use it on different crops, it's putting that cost against that crop for, again, accurate gross margins there. So we've also got that option as well for the likes of feed too, which is a relatively new release you might have seen, but we can also use any grain that we've produced. If we're wanting to use that for feeding livestock, we can add a transaction to use product for feeding livestock. And we can use that for seeding future crops as well in here. The feed is an interesting one too. So we can also, we can store our feeds in here and apply those to various trackers when we see fit. So you can see I've been purchasing monthly liquid feeds in this example and applying them to my two cattle trackers there. So that lets you keep a track of what you've got on hand, the average price per unit there, and then the total valuation of that feed as we're moving throughout the year. So this product tracker is really key for managing that, and really handy for keeping a track of the valuation of your debt stock or what you've got in store, which obviously then feeds through to your financial position or your balance sheet too. Moving on, I just wanted to show you some of the reports as well. So obviously the reports are quite key. So we've got an array of reports in here, and many of you have probably seen the figured reporting suite before. I'll touch on some of the key financial reports first. So we'll have a look at the profit and loss report. So there's lots of various options on all of the figured reports that are sort of make you allow you to customize these reporting. So we can report on any period here. We can do sort of custom periods as well if you just want to do quarterly, or you want to report across a wider range than just a 1 year period. We can obviously report from actuals and a combination of actuals and forecasts. The snapshots feature, which I won't touch on here, but is our drawing reports from our budgets essentially. And then obviously setting our actuals to any date in here. We can also add comparison periods in here as well, which is quite a cool feature where we can add a line in underneath each other line and compare our budgets, for example. So I'll add my budget from 2020 in here and show you what that looks like. Hopefully that's got some information in it. But yeah, as I say, lots of different options there for customizing these reports. So just wait for that to augment that data there. And so all the reports are sort of in the same format here. We can adjust the layout, but they're broken down into trackers typically. And we can see here for my beef cattle, we've got the income there. And then we've got the costs underneath there. So feeds, any purchases in there as well. There's our homegrown feeds is our what we've used in terms of applying what we've grown on farm, obviously. And then the liquid feeds is our purchased feeds in there. The blue lines that you're seeing here, which there isn't actually a whole lot of information in this, but the milk got some information in here. So we can see we're running actuals in here, and then underneath it is our comparison to our budget from last year. So really flexible in terms of running report periods there. While we're in this report, there's lots of options for sharing. So we can share through PDFs, and we can also download the report. But one of the cool features is being able to save a report within Figured. And saving these reports, we can create report packs in Figured, which we can share with others. But also we can comment on these reports. So this is a handy feature for the collaboration aspect of Figured. As Nick mentioned, we can invite any number of people that you want within your farming team into Figured, and they can collaborate on the data. Obviously, there's different levels of permissions within Figured that you can control. But a piece of that collaboration is being able to come in here and comment on certain numbers, which we can then share with others in the farming team, and they can come in and leave their own comments. And we can keep a record of who it's been shared with. Obviously, this one hasn't been shared with anyone, but that's a cool collaboration feature within those reports there, and I found it very, very handy for, particularly in COVID times where we can't get those face-to-face meetings. There's a lot of value in being able to comment on these reports and share those annotations. I'll also just touch on some of the other reports in here. So the crop season summary report is basically summarizing those trackers. So if we have a look at our winter wheat, which we were looking at earlier, this basically is sharing a summarized version of that tracker. So we can again save and comment on these reports and add them to report packs, but you get a breakdown of your production, your yield, if that's different across various fields, which we can obviously adjust. Same with production. Our used and unused is what we've used for feed or sold or used for seed, and what we've got unused is obviously still in our store. And then the breakdown here is our breakdown on a field level for our income, if your fields are performing differently and that sort of thing. So that's quite a neat report for the arable side of things there. We've also got the cost of production for livestock, which I won't. I can show this one quickly as well. We'll have a look at the dairy cattle here. So this is again just a breakdown of what the cost of production here. We've got our income here, which is fairly little for my dairy, but then I've got my direct costs here, which are against that to produce our gross margin, and some other expenses down here that have been allocated to that too. So yeah, lots of various reports for the production there. We've also got a production report in here as well, and yeah, probably best you come in and have a play with these yourself, as there's lots of different options that we can adjust on here in terms of the metrics that we're representing and that sort of thing. But just to give you a quick overview, this is our production report. At the moment, we're looking at a total value, a pence per litre value here, pounds per hectare, and then the stock units here, which is not set up on this particular farm. Again, sharing those reports is all available for any reports within Figured. Just to reiterate again what Nick said, you can invite any number of people into this farm. You've got control of the permissions there, so we can do that through the settings within Figured and the people tab here. So we can invite anyone in here, and you can control what they can see, what they can do. But again, really helpful for the working together as a farming team and the collaboration aspect there. So I'll leave some time for a Q&A at the end here. Obviously, if you've got any questions about this, feel free to reach out to us for a chat, or the best place to do it within Figured, as Nick mentioned, is through this chat bubble here. We're always on the other end of this, myself and Nick, James and David in the UK here, but we've got teams in North America and Australia and New Zealand as well, so they're on the other end of that. And then we've also got the help center in here. So if you're in a part of the product and you're looking for a help article, or you're a bit stuck on something, there's plenty of great articles in the help center that can help you out with that one. So that's a key resource as well while you're using the product. But hopefully that was insightful. I haven't touched on everything within Figured. Obviously, we haven't gone into the core budgeting or planning aspects or the scenarios tool. But if you are looking for more information on that, feel free to reach out. There's also some great videos on our YouTube channel as well. But I'll hand back to Nick now, and we're just going to answer some of those questions that you guys have been sending through. So if you've got any more now, feel free to send those through as well.
Cool. Awesome.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Paddy. And what a comprehensive run through for everyone. It's fantastic to see. We do have a bunch of questions that have come through from the Q&A, but what I'm going to very quickly do is just wrap us up with a quick conversation here around the different types of Figured licenses that are available, and some of the IAgSA specials that are available too. So Figured is available across 3 different types of licenses. We have Figured Light, which is for actuals only. For those who want to do what-if scenarios and long-term planning, there's Light plus Scenarios, which is an option 2. So if you're, say, looking what happens if the herd dials up or down, you can do that kind of long-term quick planning using scenarios. We haven't gone through that today, but I know we've got some really good webinars on it on our YouTube channel too. And then finally, there's Financial Farmer, which is normally £30 per month, but available for £20 through advisors. Which gives you both actuals and planning and scenarios. So it gives you the whole pack all coming through together. As IAgSA members as well, your next steps are to, well, if you're on Xero already, the next step there would be to sign up to a free trial of Figured, which is a free 30-day trial. As IAgSA members, we're happy to extend to you guys free setup and free training to bring you on board to Figured. So if you're already on Xero, you're good to go and you're ready to kind of jump into Figured to see some of that agri specific reporting. If you aren't on Xero though, you do need to be using Xero to use Figured. And usually what I recommend is to talk to your accountant or talk to someone else who's involved in it. They can take you through the setup and then you add Figured afterwards. So you're doing kind of one step at a time, starting with Xero and then making your way onto Figured. Of course, if you're not on Xero, we can offer that extended, well, we can extend to you that offer of a free setup and a free training session to help you bring some of your clients on board. You can get in touch with us like what Paddy mentioned. I've put our contact details up on here and you'll all receive a pack of this anyway, but inside of the product, like what Paddy said, is that green chat bubble, which is where you can find our in-app support, previous webinars and help docs and case studies, and you can find that on the bottom corner of literally every single page in Figured. But like, without further ado, I reckon we dive into some of these questions that have come through. And the way that we're going to run it is that I'm going to ask a question and Paddy's going to be the one to answer as our product expert today. So remember, if you have a question and you want to ask our team, hit that Q&A in the bottom, send through a message and we'll address them now through a little bit of screen sharing and maybe some live Q&A. So let's bring that up there now. Cool. So one of the questions I can see that's come through, Paddy, can BCMS be used for a livestock reconciliation?
There we go. Yes. Awesome. Yes. So we are currently working, well, we're just about to release our BCMS integration. So the way that will work is you'll connect your BCMS file, your BCMS account through Figured, and Figured will then sync with BCMS and pull all of those movements through to those livestock trackers. So yes, that is almost ready for usage, but that's the plan.
Excellent. Fantastic. Cool. So I've got another question for you, and this is from Nicola, asking if you could please quickly run through how purchased feed works in the stock tracker. Now you can send something from the allocator through to the stock tracker. So that might be one better to bring up, just a quick little demo of that.
Yeah, sure. 1 second. Let me get my screen here. Awesome. So head back to the product tracker there. Yeah, so the purchase feed, there's a couple of different ways to do it. Obviously, as I mentioned, we can run from Xero through to Figured or Figured through to Xero. So we can add purchases within Figured, which will then, of feed, which we can then create and send through to Xero, create invoices for. So we would do that by adding a purchase in here. And we can add the details of that feed that's been purchased, the product obviously within Figured, that then creates that matching invoice in Xero. But a lot of the time, obviously, as you're doing coding within Xero, that will flow through the allocator. So, yep, we'll get to the allocator. So I'll just show you I think on this account, I've got some feed coming through to the allocator there. So if we look at my 1 second, my liquid feeds here. So this is a Xero account that I've got here coming through. We'll look at my allocated transactions. So the way that comes through is it just comes through as a financial figure here. So in February, I had this amount for 4,000 here, which I've then recorded a purchase for liquid feeds of 1,600 litres here. and that then sends that through to the product tracker. So if we head back here down to our liquid feeds, we can see here 1st of February liquid feeds, 1600 litres here. So that's then in our store. We've got the valuation for that, the price per unit, and then the way that would work is we would go, we'd add an application of that. So this is an actual. We'll apply it on today. We can leave any notes in here against this application as well. These are a list of our products that we've got in store here. So if we go liquid feed, we'll use 10 litres of that. We can then say that's coming out of our product tracker. This is the Xero account here. And then this is where we add where it's going to. So I'll use that on my beef cattle and maybe my dairy cattle as well at a split. And then we can allocate that. So that is how that works. And obviously you can set up your own products of having different types of feeds in here as well by creating a new product up here. So that's sort of up to you and how you want to manage that, but that's the process there coming through from Xero, or obviously working in Figured back to Xero.
Good stuff, Paddy. It's excellent. So it's a really comprehensive way of being able to do things like purchased feed. It also works for homegrown feed, doesn't it, Paddy? Being able to add applications.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't touch on that one, but yeah, same thing. So when you're recording your harvest in there, you can use some of that harvest for feeding livestock, and it's the same process in there in terms of applying that feed that you've got there as against those livestock trackers.
Excellent. Good stuff. I've got another question that's come through here, Paddy.
Yep.
Let's go for this one. It's a question from Sarah around birth dates in the livestock trackers and for dairy, asking about automatic aging. And I think it's probably a good chance to talk about that BCMS and how that does automatic aging, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully the majority of you will be using BCMS. Obviously, if you've got cattle, everyone's got a BCMS account. So that aging will be automated very shortly when our BCMS connection is live. So we'll connect the Figured file to your BCMS account, and then that all of those movements, those aging movements between the age groups that we had in there, will all be automated. There is, within Figured, we can obviously create aging transactions. And you saw in that stock balance, so there's a quick way of doing that just by heading down and adjusting those ages. So obviously for sheep, we don't have there's no integration with BCMS there for the sheep, so there'll still be aging through that stock balancer there. And there's also a button which you may have seen in there for auto aging the stock. So you can age every animal up automatically or at once just by pressing that one button there. So but yeah, in terms of the cattle, that would be definitely automated through the movements from BCMS.
Yeah, sure saves you having to enter in birth dates for hundreds of animals as well, doesn't it? When you just go straight to the source, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're trying to cut down on that manual data entry, obviously, as much as we can. So always looking for where we can pull that data from other sources.
Cool. I have got a question here that's come through from Leslie, and I might be the one to answer this one instead. And it's a question about, can Xero handle partial exemption VAT? And also, is there a fixed asset register to calculate depreciation monthly? And those are both really good questions, Leslie. So Xero can handle partially exempt VAT. It doesn't automatically calculate what the change needs to be, but it can handle it in terms of filing. And Xero does have a fixed asset register as well. So that can automatically calculate your depreciation monthly based off of a schedule that you can choose, whether you want to do straight line or another method. Both of those are handled inside of Xero. VAT filing is where it kind of lives inside of Xero for this stack. And I hope that answers your questions there, Leslie. Right. I've got another question here around from Susanna. Here we go. If you buy in hay and straw for resale, Paddy, does Figured keep running totals of the amounts, i.e. deducting ongoing sales? So can you use it for inventory?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I mean, any products that you want to that you're purchasing and you want to keep track of the quantity of, we can keep track of those within the product tracker there that we saw. So yeah, absolutely, we can keep track of all of that in the inventory tracker there.
Yeah, there is one thing I might add on there as well, Susanna, is that when you're looking at using inventory for like a kind of classic inventory use rather than store for application later, you may want to take a look at some of the rest of the Xero ecosystem to see if there's another tool that may be better suited to it. That's also relevant if you've got a client that say has a farm shop, or if they have a cafe or something on site. Because you've got Xero at the center of it, you've got the rest of the ecosystem available to you too. So I do recommend checking that out and taking a quick look at what your other options are. But like what Paddy says, you can do it inside of Figured. Cool. Also, I got another question here for you, Paddy. Here we go. Oops. In the P&L account or in any report, can you drill to see how a number is made up? How do you get the individual numbers?
Okay. Yeah, so in those P&L reports, what we're seeing is obviously the summary of those transactions in there. It depends obviously what you're looking at, but that transaction data is for the actuals is all held within Figured. We can drill down into the account schedule. So every account within Figured has an account schedule, which we can see the individual transactions of. But in the report itself, we don't break down the numbers. They're obviously just summary numbers per month, but we can drill down into those numbers in other areas there.
Yeah. I might also quickly add there as well, is that when you're on the planning grid inside of Figured, so we didn't look too much at planning today, we just try to give you a broad overview of what you can do and why we do things inside of Figured. If you're using planning, you can click on a number on the planning grid and then it takes you through to Xero and it shows you exactly what's made up that transaction in Xero. The reason we take you into Xero rather than doing it inside of Figured is because if you want to make a change, the best place to do that is inside of Xero, since that's where the pounds are coming from and the quantities are inside of Figured as well as the rest of your farm reporting. Cool. I've got another question here coming through. Does Figured link to ARAMS, ARAMS for sheep recording?
Okay. Yeah, no, unfortunately not yet anyway. We're obviously we have an ethos of integrating to other data sources where we can, pulling in information because again, the whole idea is we want to minimize that double data entry. So at the moment there isn't an integration for the sheep, but possibly in the future we'll integrate with a system like that to pull that information across.
Yeah. It's a good point to note is that if you do have other systems that you're looking to integrate, let us know. We do have a feature suggestion page inside of Figured where you can vote on it and we can kind of get a sense for how much people want to integrate with it so that we can then take your feedback and influence the Figured roadmap so that we're building the right things for you. So we'd love to hear that kind of feedback. If you have a lot of sheep farmers and you're going, look, having ARAMS or having Scotty ID or having something like that would be really useful, let us know. And we can use that kind of information to prioritize what we build. Cool. I think we're just about out of time. Looking at the clock, there is one more question I will pose to you, Paddy, and it's about scenarios. Can you use Figured for what-if scenarios, like reducing the number of milking cows from, I don't know, from 180 to 150? Can you use Figured for that?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, that is one place that we didn't get a chance to touch on today. I can show you quickly what a scenario looks like in a very brief, as we are running out of time here, but there is this tool within Figured called Scenarios, and it's our long-term business planning tool. So this is an annualized tool that we use to do those what-if scenarios across 1 to 10 years. So this is obviously some demo ones in here, but what we would do is use a Xero data as a base for 1 year, spread that across however long you're wanting to do it for, typically 5 years like this one. And then, you might create a status quo one, which is what we'd recommend, create a status quo scenario to track how we're going for the next 5 years. And then we can copy that across to a new scenario and adjust variables within that to plan out what happens if we take on the neighbour's land. Like in this example, we've taken on the neighbour's land. We've taken on a loan to service that as well. So we can adjust how we're tracking over the next sort of 5 years, 10 years, and see what making adjustments to our plan does to our financials, basically. So that's a very quick look at the scenarios tool, but very, very handy tool for planning out those long-term business plans for your farming business. Very handy at the moment, very relevant at the moment for phasing out things like the subsidies, but also adjusting milk prices and anything really. So absolutely. If you do want more information on that, there's some great videos on our YouTube channel on how to create scenarios and how they work. And obviously, if you want some more information, you can reach out to us as well.
Excellent. I have noticed just a couple of new questions come through. I'll try answer just a couple of them really quickly. I know we're over time, so I appreciate this kind of eating into everyone's lunch break. One question here. When will Xero handle a milk price pence per litre of more than 4 decimal places? Xero won't be, because they do kind of work within finances. Instead, you can record that pence per litre price with up to 4 decimal places inside a figured. So you can do reports based on that as well as forecasting. So to our anonymous attendee for that, you can do that inside a figured. I've got a question here from Jane asking, which app do you recommend for field records to link into figured? Do you want to take that one, Paddy?
Yeah, so we don't have a link, not yet anyway, to import those field records into figured. That is, again, something that we're looking to bring in. So if you do have one that you currently use or one that you would recommend to us that you think would be a great fit, please do let us know in the feature suggestion page into what you'd like to see there. But as it currently stands, we're still sort of scoping out an idea for that, for linking with those fields.
When we do an integration, of course, they generally do need to be cloud tools for field records, so that can be the likes of someone like Muddy Boots, and we do have quite a few farmers who use figured alongside another existing desktop tool like Gatekeeper, for example. So with that, you could do pull up a bit of data out of Gatekeeper and update figured and get that reconciled. So thanks for the question, Jane. We'd love to hear a little bit more about what you prefer to use, and we recommend checking out cloud accounting tools kind of like Muddy Boots. Cool. Awesome. One more question I think we have time for. One here from Laura asking, for farmers who home mill and mix, can you set up various livestock rations based on proportions of feed included to calculate ration costs? So that to me sounds like taking some of the inputs that you've got, some of the things inside of storage, and creating a new product out of that. What do you reckon, Paddy?
Yeah, I'd be interested probably to discuss that use case more. I haven't specifically come across that myself, but I'm sure that does sound exactly like what you've just described there. So yeah, I think we could definitely manage that by creating that new product within the tracker there. Obviously, you can create as many of your own custom products as you want, and then we can obviously have quantities of that on hand that you can apply to your livestock and other trackers.
The way immediately I'd be thinking of it, Laura, would be to use just the products as they are. So the things that you've purchased in, and then the things that you've grown, and then adding feed applications to the trackers based on the quantities that are going into the mix, since we don't support creating a new derived product at the moment. But look, if that's something that you're finding is really important, let us know. And again, we need that kind of feedback for prioritizing our roadmap so we can keep building the product into the future. Laura, if you'd like to reach out to us as well, we'd love to kind of take you through and give you that detail as to how it works. I know we've got a couple of experts on the call as well who've used Figured for a little while, who've seen how this works in action too. So thank you, Laura. Lots of questions. Everyone's so excited. Are you okay to keep eating into your lunch break a bit there, Paddy? We can keep going.
I'm fine. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Get these questions answered.
Cool. Excellent. I've got a question here. Are broiler poultry enterprises in the pipeline, Paddy?
It's certainly something we're interested in. We don't currently have any plans for it, but we would love to hear about the sort of structure of that and what you'd expect it to look like. But at the moment, we don't have any plans for it. But obviously, we're always looking for new additions to add to that. So if that's something you want to see, again, please do reach out to us and let us know, and it'd be interesting to chat through what that would look like. So yeah.
We have a few ideas on how we can do it inside of Figured. We're still in that discovery phase. To hear your feedback on the broilers. Excellent. Question here again, Paddy, can you do individual field gross margins?
So we're producing, obviously we're allocating all of those costs to fields, which you can see in the crop season summary report. So in those crop season summaries, you'll get a breakdown of the costs and income on a per field level, as well as the yield and production as well. So all of that information is within that report there.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah, I know there's a lot of detail being captured when you're using Figured. So there's a lot of interesting things we can do with the reports into the future. A question here, can Figured be used as a standalone or with any other software? Did you hear me, Paddy? I think we lost Paddy, but it's okay. I can answer that one for you there, Susanna. Can Figured be used as standalone or with other software? So Figured is designed to integrate with Xero. They are the accounting partner that we've chosen, given they are the most aligned with the direction we want to take our product as well. We are exploring having Figured available as standalone for scenarios or BCMS. So you can say have Figured as almost like a bank feed for cows when it comes to doing BCMS. That's something that we're exploring and we'll be looking into the future. But we'd love to hear again, if there's another tool that you're looking at, I'd love to hear which one you're tossing up between and hear a bit more about that. Look, sorry guys, I've got some more questions coming through. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap up now. We have run a little bit over our time here. There's a question here around Gatekeeper Cloud and around extra labor. And look, I'd love to take you guys through that through a call. If you can reach out to our team, otherwise we'll also be sending everyone a recording of the session as well as a pack for the presentation, so you can all go through it at your own pace. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. So look, I'd like to thank you all for coming to today's webinar and taking the time to ask us lots of questions, see how Figured works. I'd like to thank Paddy for your product tour as well, taking us through the product and showing us all about how it works. We'll be sending through an email to you guys afterwards. And thank you again to IAgSA for hosting us today and allowing us to be a part of your conference week as a corporate sponsor. So thank you very much to the IAgSA team as well. Thank you to you all. Take care and enjoy the rest of your week, everyone.